What's going on, guys? In this review, I'm going to be breaking down episode 16 of Attack on Titan season 4, which is the last episode for this half of the season. Today I'll be talking about everything that I felt needed explaining, such as why this Titan shoved Zeke into its stomach, and how Eren already knew that Marley had infiltrated the island. Before we begin, I really want to thank you guys for watching my episode breakdowns for this season so far. I mean, prior to this season, I didn't really do much Attack on Titan content on YouTube at least, so it really has blown me away, your support. We even managed to get trending on YouTube a couple of times, which was insane, so I just want to say I really do appreciate it. When the second half of the season starts again, I will of course be doing more breakdown videos, so hit that sub button to make sure you don't miss those, and drop a like as it does help out the channel. Okay, so episode 16 was called Above and Below, and it starts off immediately after Zeke's suicidal explosion. The sound of the detonation was enough to get the attention of Hange and the Yaegerists, who were already on their way to his location. As we know, Hange is one of the handful of people that knew where Zeke was being held hostage, hence why they've been forced at gunpoint to bring Flock to those coordinates. I gotta say, it would have been interesting to see what the Yaegerists would have done if they arrived and had to face off against Levi, but luckily for them, he was out of commission. In this scene, we see that Zeke has literally been ripped in half, and I probably don't need to tell you that regular Titan Shifter healing cannot fix this. The anime does a good job of conveying his gradual death, as the sound of the rain stops while Zeke begins to lose his senses. In normal circumstances, this would have been the end for the Beast Titan, but a few interesting things happen from this point onwards. Firstly, he briefly sees a vision of a random girl holding a bucket, and she seems to have a similar hairstyle to this mural of the original founding Titan. This original Titan was of course called Ymir, and she was known to have made a deal with the devil to gain her Titan powers, although as Tom Sava alluded to, maybe she got those powers by touching something else instead. The girl's eyes have a hollow look to them, similar to how we've seen other characters when they've experienced immense pain or when they're being forced to do something they don't want to do, so this kind of indicates to us that there's something she's not happy about. This vision is then followed by one of the pure Titans Zeke created coming back from the dead, but I need to remind you guys that this is the same Titan that had its head crushed and its body ripped apart not that long ago. It grabs what's left of Zeke's dying body before shoving it inside its guts, and out of context, this is one of the most bizarre moments in the history of the series. From the smoke, we can tell that the pure Titan is still regenerating, so by putting Zeke inside it, the intention is that he will also be able to regenerate as well. That being said, this scene was the last moment we got to see of him in this episode, meaning that his fate and Levi's fate won't be revealed until the second half of the season. The anime then switches over to Yelena having lunch with Commander Piques, as the Yaegerists now have full control of Paradis Island. Until recently, the military on Paradis was trying to resist the takeover, with Piques plotting different ways to steal the founding Titan from Eren. However, they had no choice but to surrender after this moment, since Zeke's scream made them realize they could be turned into Titans at any time. The commander knew it would be pointless to put up a fight, because when your enemy can turn you into a mindless monster, it's just not worth taking the risk. Many episodes ago, when Zeke first arrived on the island, Yelena and the volunteers were all held at gunpoint, but even then she remained calm and said one day they would eat at the same table again. At the time, we didn't know why she was so relaxed, but it's because she knew that Piques and the other military officials had been contaminated with the wine, and that they'd soon be forced into this position. Here she makes good on that promise that they'd all be dining at the same table, although Piques himself was refusing to eat. We get a few relevant bits of info out of their conversation, with the first being that all military soldiers have been gathered in Shiganshina. Before the Yaegerists takeover occurred, Shiganshina was already set to be evacuated since Zachary wanted to use it as a testing ground for the rumbling. As a result, it meant that no civilians were in the district, which is why it's the only safe place for these contaminated soldiers to go. Yelena has made the soldiers wear different armbands to indicate their new status, with the white bands meaning they've willingly defected to the Yaegerists and likely was on their side even before the truth of the wine was revealed. Red armbands indicate they've been forced to work for the Yaegerists after finding out about the wine, and the black armbands just mean you're screwed. Given that Eren, Zeke and Yelena will be in charge of the island for the foreseeable future, people with the black armbands will have the lowest social standing in society, which Piques notes is very similar to how Marley does things. In the last episode, we discovered that Zeke's true intention is to eliminate the Eldian race, therefore saving the world from the Titans and saving the Eldians from their suffering. The only people who knew about that true plan were the Yaeger brothers themselves and Yelena, because she was the one that told Eren about it during their secret meeting. Other volunteers like Onyankopon had no idea, so when she sort of let it slip during this conversation, it understandably gets a shocked reaction from the crowd. These guys never assumed there was another ulterior motive. As far as they were concerned, this takeover of the island was just a way for them to live in luxury. You can tell in the following scenes that Onyankopon is somewhat uncomfortable with the way things are progressing, but for now at least he has to go along with it, because understandably he does not want his brains blown out by Yelena. Previously we saw that after Eren was finished beating up and insulting his friends, he ordered for them to be sent to Shiganshina, which is where they're locked up in this underground prison. I explained in my review of episode 14 why Shiganshina is likely the place where Zeke and Eren agreed to meet, so it's interesting that he would demand that Armin, Mikasa, and the rest of the gang be sent to the same location as well. He could have had them sent to any prison, but for some reason he chose one in Shiganshina, and in the jail cell, Jean questions whether Eren might have a hidden motive. After all, he's doing a lot of things that are out of character, but for now this question remains up in the air. When Yelena arrives, she explains the full details of the true plan, and this scene where she shoots Grides is very interesting as it shows us just how much she buys into Zeke's philosophy. Zeke believes his plan will save the Eldian race from suffering, so he sees it as something that will help them rather than hurt them, and this is exactly what Yelena thinks as well. That's why when this guy was disrespecting Sasha by calling her a devil, he was unknowingly showing that he wasn't on board with Zeke's plan. Clearly he sees Eldians as lesser than himself and never sought to actually help them by any definition of the word. So by default, that mindset doesn't really go hand in hand with what Yelena is trying to achieve. Onyankopon once mentioned that Yelena would kill anyone who doubted her, with this just being another example in a long list of casualties. As a side note, it was cool to find out that Niccolo was romantically in love with Sasha. Like, obviously we suspected it, but it was never 100% confirmed to be romantic until this moment. Moving over to Gabi, she was locked up in a different room by herself, and that's because Eren had very specific plans. Before we get into that though, it's important to note that she seems to be confused here, as there's a small detail that the anime left out. During the equivalent scene in the manga, Gabi was explicitly shown to be thinking about Sasha's family crying, and she felt guilty for making them feel that pain. That's why she's questioning herself, since she can't understand the reason she feels this way despite them being island devils. This is one more step in Gabi's long path to de-radicalization, as she is slowly beginning to realize that they are all the same. Anyway, Eren shows up and asks Gabi to help him locate the Marlyean invaders, considering that both Pieck and Porco had already infiltrated the walls. If you see my video about the Cart Titans, then you'll know they have the best endurance out of any shifter, and as a result, Pieck used it to walk from the shore of Paradis all the way up until the walls themselves. Porco presumably was riding on her back, but one thing they couldn't avoid was her Titan footprints being left in the grass. One of the Yaegerists must have discovered those massive prints and reported it back to Eren, which is why he was certain that there were spies in the first place. However, he didn't even have time for Gabi to help him before Pieck finally made her reappearance and kills the guard immediately. Despite two guns being pointed directly at him, Eren seemed pretty certain that he wouldn't die because he believed the warriors didn't have permission to kill the founding Titan. We know this theory is true because earlier this season, Magath stated that killing the founder would only postpone the problem, and that Marley needs to gain the founder for itself. Therefore, both Pieck and Gabi would be in serious trouble if they broke the rules, and Eren is correct to say that their families would likely suffer the consequences. From the beginning, Pieck's real goal was to lure Eren into a position where Porco could eat him, and she did this in a very clever way. By pretending that she was working against Marley, it was enough to gain Eren's curiosity. I mean, yeah, he didn't trust her, but he was still intrigued as to whether or not she was willing to expose her comrades. By going to the roof, she promised to expose the location of the spies on Paradis, and on the way she saw Porco in the crowd and signaled to him, which, let him know where they were going. That's why he knew where to burst in to eat Eren, although sadly for them, he literally just missed. When she tried to get Porco's attention, a few soldiers were surprised that this short girl was really a Marlyean warrior. But what surprised me was that so many of them were simps. By my count, that's at least 6 Eldian soldiers who are blushing at the sight of Pieck, so I guess it's a good thing that Isayama didn't stick with his original design. Now, the reality is that when she was trying to convince Eren she was betraying Marley, most of what Pieck said was still true. It is the reality that Eldians will never truly be viewed as anything other than people who can turn into Titans, and like Grisha said in the last episode, they are doomed to be trapped unless someone changes something. Being able to acknowledge that shows that Pieck is at least aware that the fate of the Eldian race is not looking so good, and so in this situation that was enough to get Eren's interest. He attached Pieck to Gabi with handcuffs to ensure that she wouldn't transform into the Cart Titan, because the explosive transformation would kill the warrior candidate immediately. During their walk to the roof, it's clear that neither she nor Marley know exactly why Zeke has such special powers, but Pieck was clever enough to speculate that he can draw out the power of the founding Titan. Time and time again, she has proven herself to be the most observant of the current warriors, and on this occasion, it was Zeke's words back in season 3 that made her come to this realization. Until then, she'd always felt like Zeke was lying, but in this moment when Zeke met his younger brother, she could tell that he was telling the truth. So when you look at the full context of the situation now, that's why she assumed that maybe he could help Eren use the founding Titan. She later questions why Eren isn't using the founder, which is yet another way of her assessing just how much of the power he can use. As they reach the roof, Yelena has a firing squad ready to go in case Pieck tricks them, and of course Eren had already cut his finger in case he needed to transform. This was really a life or death situation for the warriors, Gabi in particular, but at this moment Porco bursts through the roof and eats Eren's legs. This prompted Eren to transform as well, and I'm pretty sure it's the first time we've seen Mappa animate either of these titans in 2D, with the Attack Titan looking especially good. In the ideal scenario, Galliard would have eaten the spine and would have inherited the Founding Titan, Attack Titan, and Warhammer Titan in this one bite, so it is unlucky that he literally missed by inches. Regardless, the smoke from this transformation was enough for incoming Marlyean forces to pinpoint the Founder's location. Aboard the airship is Colt, whose main priority is to save Falco, and obviously Reiner is there as well, who has come to get revenge for Liberio. Without Reiner's interference, Marley was going to wait 6 months to launch an attack with the rest of the world, so this upcoming battle right now is really all down to him. The episode ends with Eren staring down the enemy ships, and of course this battle will be continued in the second half of the season. If you're an anime only, then do let me know in the comments, are you going to wait for the next episode in like maybe 10 months time, or do you think you're going to read the manga in the meantime? Like I said, thank you guys for watching my episode breakdown so far, and despite the season being on break, there are still many more videos to come, so hit that sub button if you haven't already. Until the next one, peace out.